Hello, and welcome back to Suzerain. And today's episode, we are doing a briefing on the results from the Reform Committee. I came a little early to the meeting room before anyone showed up. We had scheduled a meeting to discuss the progress of the Reform Committee regarding the new constitution. I took a seat on the center chair in the vacant meeting room as I waited for them to show up. The reforms were slowly becoming more significant expectations of my government. We would be changing Seoul's constitution of 29. Most people nowadays blame the Constitution for the outstanding problems of the country. On the other hand, the reformists in the Assembly had been getting louder about their demands. What I knew for sure was that I needed to do something about this encroaching chaos before it swallowed me. Meanwhile, Lucien, Peter, and Nia had been leading the committee to prepare an initial draft for the constitutional amendments. I was intrigued to hear the results. There was a knock on the door. It was Lucien. "Good afternoon, sir." Lucien arrived exactly on the hour mark again. His punctuality could always be described as obsessive. "Are you waiting behind the door to come at the exact second?" I'm sorry, sir." "You seem to be arriving at the exact second for all the meetings." "Punctuality is important to me, sir. I'm just doing my job." He took a seat on the table and took out a bunch of documents, spreading them on the long table. "We should begin the meeting as soon as Miss Morgna and Miss Vice President, or Mr. oh, that was quick. Mr. Vice President arrives. We finally have some results from the Reform Committee." How does it look?" "Well, the situation is kind of complicated, but I'm sure we will make it work, just like the accomplished many things before. We'll go over the details regarding the new constitution in the meeting." A few minutes later, Peter and Nia also arrived. After a short chat, everyone sat down and took out their notes. I knew it was going to be a long meeting. There's a lot to talk about the future of this process. Let us begin to tackle the points of contention. "Mr. President, our committee meetings were really fruitful, and we already started working on constitutional draft together with the reformists. They demanded a little too much. We've had success with Franz Richter to create a realistic draft that could potentially go through the Supreme Court." "A little? They demanded to rewrite the whole Constitution. Mr. Richter's deputy even suggested removing the term sword from the Constitution completely. I also didn't like their theatrics, but the requests were definitely not outrageous. They were just not realistic in today's political circumstances. Nonetheless, Mr. Vice President, thanks for convincing arguments we seem to have reached a common ground already. If we can fully reach an agreement with the reformists, we will be very strong in the Assembly to propose the change." Can we reach a 2/3 majority in the Assembly? "If we can get Franz Richter to work with you on this, our only problem would be uniting our own party. We'll never be able to get the NFP to work with us. We need the majority of our 130 seats in the Assembly to vote in favor. With PFJP's full support of 70 votes, we will easily surpass the needed 163. I mean, yeah, that's a maximum of 200 votes there, so we could even lose, like, the 30 more central or right of our party and still be fine. But it will be tough to unite the USP with all the diverse wings that have formed. You must make them follow you loyally." We did it before the election. We can do it now. "Albin Calvin and his reform wing would be supporting you. He already weighed in heavily in the committee meetings. However, the conservatives would be tough to break. The influence of Seoul is still living strong in the party." "Do you think they can be persuaded?" "I'm sure it's possible, but regardless of my opinion, we need to persuade most of them to support us for passing an amendment to the Constitution. And there's only one person who is key to back them up. Gloria Torrey. She's well respected by the Soulish. She'll be our biggest obstacle in the Assembly, and her demands will be extensive. I also have reasons to think she might be Orso's pocket. She will be tough to break, but we'll need her to help to get the conservative support. Is it possible to pass the Supreme Court? They are the biggest obstacle. Even if we pass the Assembly, the Chief Justice will do his best to block our amendments. We need at least 6 out of the 11 judges to vote for the proposal, but Mr. Hawker has enormous influence over the judges. We should reach out to the judges in secret. Some of them might be willing to break ranks to support us. All means are to be considered in order to succeed. Neo was taken aback by the statement. According to the Constitution, I'm a member of the Supreme Court, which means we already have one vote. 2 of the judges are friends of mine and have similar opinions about the reforms. Consider them with me. Who else would be willing to support the reforms? I think Judge Edmund can be persuaded, an extension Mr. Dalton and Mr. Merton. They weren't really blinded by the soulist ideology. Yes, those 3 don't seem to be working directly with Chief Justice Hawker. If we can get to Isabel Elmond, we might get the 6 votes needed. That's our best bet. What are the demands? We should run down each of the main demands of the committee and get your input first. Miss Morgana can explain them further. We'll start with the first red line. The new constitution will fix the loopholes regarding the president's absolute veto powers. Even though Mr. Richter put on a whole show about why vetoes should be completely removed, the committee has almost unanimously agreed on fixing the loophole, thus limiting the potential presidential vetoes. My suggestion is to add a clause detailing the methods of the assembly may override a veto with some sort of supermajority. One person should never be able to block the rest. The loopholes give the president too much power. Which could be misused. Whatever you decide, it's important to get a balanced picture. We'll be making history by changing the 29 Constitution of Seoul. The second one is about the judiciary. The new constitution will remove the Supreme Court's right to vote on legislation. This is yet another point that was unanimously agreed on by all parties. Turkin Seoul's established the rule to protect his 29 constitution. We all know most of the judges are still his pawns. Constitutional amendments will still be very difficult to accomplish reform like this, particularly because we will keep the 2/3 vote system to be able to propose a change. However, the judiciary will not have the final say in the amendments. This is already what we wanted to do. Yes, this will ensure that there won't be another politically motivated Supreme Court. Apart from those 2 critical points, they have other major demands. They want to reform the appointment procedures of the ministers. Mr. Richter clarified that the Assembly should have a say in the formation of the Council of Ministers. That is something a majority in our party also supports. Well, Mr. Richter also talked about abolishing the member of honor rights of Turkin Seoul that gives him absolute immunity and makes him a permanent member of the Assembly. Well, that's a controversial one. I doubt the USP would like that. Immunity of the justices, the impeachment of the president, limiting the powers of presidential decrees, all of this came up during the committee meetings. Yes, the reformists expect big reforms, while our faction and USP are not very keen on pushing changes that are too great. I'd say keeping everything in the middle ground is the safest bet. No need to agitate anyone too much. They have valid concerns that we need to look at. I'll keep working with them and keep you updated, Mr. President. Well, regardless of what Mr. Rain decides, we will need to work together to push this agenda. Now we need to have a better picture of your intentions, sir. I will start reaching out to my contacts to make a draft that works for us. I'll present your input to the committee. In a few months, you would have the draft on your desk to make the final changes yourself. I think this was yet another fruitful meeting, sir. Your service is appreciated. Thank you for your kind words, sir. You can count on us, Anton. Yes, Mr. President. I think this is what we'll call it, sir. Have a good day. They left the room. And I killed them all. No. Not yet. Okay, Linkirk. Incident at President Seoul's mansion on Juru Island. A private boat nearing Turkin Seoul's mansion on Juru Island prompted the Coast Guard to fire warning shots. Despite the initial alarm, former President Turkin Seoul allowed the boat to approach for a brief conversation. The occurrence has raised questions about the security protocol near the obscure mansion. Details of the conversation remain undisclosed. Conriat. Promising industrial potential. The mayor of Conriat, Chris Saul, reports that the decision to start the construction of the L1 high-speed railway project caused industrial investors all over this country to invest money in regions near the city. The mayor is hopeful that the completion of the project will result in substantial economic growth in Conriat. Nature Preservation Protests. The Nature Preservation Foundation is protesting against the remaining coal industry, a significant contributor to Swedish energy. The group is voicing concerns about the environmental impact on the industry. The protest is gaining momentum and drawing attention to the need for sustainable energy alternatives. The future of coal industry operates in Morbel is uncertain. Read the report. L1 construction plan started by Underhaul. Underhaul Construction has reported that preparatory work for the L1 railway has already started, including clearing land and transportation equipment. Construction of the railway will be started in the next months from Whole Sword. We got some news. Minister Manger, Rural Development of Vision. Minister of Rural Development Gus Manger recently unveiled an ambitious investment plan concept aimed at revitalizing Swordland's rural economies and ensuring the nation's food sustainability. Dubbed the Groony Rural Development Investment, the plan envisions judicial resource allocation to invigorate agricultural communities, strengthen food security, and bolster the regional economy of Groony. This multifaceted strategy is indicative of broader shift towards rural development, emphasizing sustainable agriculture and regional prosperity. Economists. Cooperation with Rumburg, an economic imperative. Amidst ongoing geopolitical uncertainties, there's an economic imperative that can't be ignored. The potential of a northern neighbor, Rumburg, known for its large energy economy and access to two leading energy corporations, Reason Oil and Gas, ROG, Corporation, and Rural Emerald Energy, REE, ripe for collaboration. These energy giants represent not just the possibility of wealth generation, but also a means of diplomatic softening, aligning mutual interests to avoid future conflict. By welcoming partnerships, we should ensure that globalization serves as a bridge, not a barrier. Yeah, well, get them to do it, and I'd go for it. Job freeze sparks fears for Gassam's financial stability. Unsettling rumors are spreading about Gassam, one of Swordland's largest corporations, as the company puts a halt on hiring. The unprecedented move, coupled with a lack of usual job openings, has sparked concerns about the company's physical stability. Thousands of blue-collar workers across Narbel and Lachapin depend on Gassam for employment, and the rumors cast an ominous shadow over their livelihoods. UPP protests electoral bill. Growing discontent over the past electoral campaign finance bill, which has excluded public funding for parties that aren't able to enter the Grand National Assembly, has reached a boiling point when all Workers' Party Bloody officials and members went out to protest around the country. Strong voices of support came from the Labor Union of Swordland and the People's Freedom and Justice Party, calling the bill unfair for most parties and an attack on democratic principles. The new bill means that the WPB lost half of their total party funding, and since they couldn't pass the high election threshold of 10% to enter the Assembly, aren't eligible at all to receive any public election funding for the 1957 election. The WPB leader said the workers' struggle continues, and that they are willing to explore other options to be able to represent the hundreds of thousands of people that voted for them. For now, their struggle continues. President Rain and the USP establishment are actively seeking to suppress the political representation of this country. Just for that one bill, I just wanted money, okay? Look, I can be supportive and also be greedy. I can do both. Gosh. It's like these guys don't even understand how politics work. That's probably why you didn't reach the 10%. You don't know how politics even work. Gosh. IoTake Plan, a global perspective. The CSP's IoTake Plan, an ambitious investment scheme designed to revolutionize Rika's infrastructure and education sectors, has received a mixed response from around the world. Western Mercopa and Northern Xena display skepticism, their concerns rooted in geopolitical maneuvering and ideological clashes. In contrast, Rika's welcomed the plan warmly, hopeful for the transformation it promises. Caution has been advised by Enrica and Yarktalis, who fear a heating up of superpower rivalries. While the plan demonstrates the CSP's commitment to sustainable development, its reception underscores the complexity of international politics. Alright, now let's do a meeting with Chief Justice Orso Hawker. The administration had been working day and night on the overwhelming amount of issues they were facing in the country. The departments sent several documents which required my signature so they could start working on the new decisions that were taken. After I signed dozens of them, I closed my eyes to relax for a moment. Another long day. Even though I really wished to leave the palace for the day, Lucien had earlier told me that Chief Justice wanted to speak to me. We planned to meet in my office in 30 minutes. I waited for him, wondering what subject he would raise. Take a moment to relax. I stretched out my arms and looked out the window. Thousands of shimmering lights in Holstered skyline were mesmerizing. Suddenly I heard a knock on the door. It was Lucien. Good evening, sir. Good evening, Lucien. I'm sorry that I couldn't explain the situation to you in detail earlier, sir. The Chief Justice insisted on seeing you this evening. I do not know what he has to say, but it will probably be about the new Constitution. He will be coming shortly with Judge Mr. Gracie to the meeting. We shouldn't take them lightly. I think he's here to test the waters. I agree. They will probably try to get you on their side. We should... There were 3 knocks on the... Lucian checked his watch. He looked rather worried. Livia opened the door. Chief Justice Orso Hawker and Judge Heron Gracie entered the room. Good evening, Mr. President. It's great to see you. Evening. Welcome, Justice Gracie and Chief Justice Hawker. Well, good to see you indeed. Orso gestured at the sofa in the office. May I? Please. We all took our seats on 2 opposite sofas and made ourselves comfortable. How are you your first couple of months, Mr. President? I hope you're faring well. Thank you. It's very busy, but I'm doing good. It will only get busier, but I think you're doing a good job so far, considering all that's happening around us with the shootings near the palace and soldiers on the borders. He let out a deep sigh. It's a troubling time. We appreciate your concerns. So, you probably know why, so you now recall why we're here. Please enlighten me, Mr. Hawker. We know you are working on a new constitution. The Supreme Court does not approve of this. With all due respect, the Constitution needs to be updated, sir. I am sure you are well aware of the public demand and our circumstances. Is that so? I see that you are the only one, or the one who is not aware of our actual circumstances. You want to make a weaker Constitution in the midst of problems both inside and outside. Even your proposal passes the Assembly, I will make sure it will not pass the Supreme Court. That much is clear. You haven't even seen the proposal yet, Mr. Hawker. Is it too soon to be against it? Do you think I live under a rock, Mr. President? I know what's going on. Yet you, Mr. President, seem to be only partially informed about the current situation. Please let us explain the reasons of our stance. Oh, please explain. We are protecting the Constitution because it works, Mr. President. It is efficient and it gives you the authority to lead the nation with swift decisions. Swordland has more important... I am literally trying to give up my powers. Why is it so difficult to make me less powerful? Like, can't I just say, I don't need these powers? Like, come on. Swordland has more important problems and threats that we should face right now instead of nitpicking about some paragraphs of the Constitution. We have potential war within our borders. Orso signaled to Heron with his hand to let him speak instead. Mr. President, I know you are a busy man, so I will make this quick. We all know that Swordist security forces found stashed Rubrigian weaponry in the hideout of Bludish separatists. K-74s are roaming inside Swordland at the moment. As much as Rumbring poses a direct threat, now it's clear that they are also intervening in our country and weaponizing our minority against us. It's not unprecedented to think that the Bloods will start their terror again with their new toys. Not to mention the fights that broke out between the left and right wing up their shooting Bernard Circus. Communists are rising with the support of United Cortana. The chaos is imminent for Swordland. And sadly, we don't see the administration taking necessary precautions. You said you will not focus on military during your term. Under current circumstances, that cannot be tolerated at any cost. Mr. Hawker, the court has no jurisdiction over these matters. Aren't we all part of the state, Mr. President? We are all responsible if Swordland fails to overcome these threats. But regardless of that, are you also aware that the armed Bludish separatists have direct connections with the Workers' Party of Bludia? They claim otherwise. They may claim they have no ties with the separatists, but most of their members used to be part of them before they formed the Workers' Party of Bludia. How about the name, Mr. President? Isn't it not the Workers' Party of Swordland, is it? As far as I'm aware, there's no nation called Bludia around here. What is this all about? The only reason they are not in the assembly is because of the electoral threshold. They have gotten quite big. They are clearly getting outside help, and their connection to the parliamentary Brutish force cannot be denied. And all of a sudden, the reformists are trying to decrease the electoral threshold so that the Brutish separatists can be legalized or legitimized in the assembly to achieve their aims of independence. You think that's Mr. Richter's intention? I suspect his intentions are grander. But I wish the only issues with the Brutish terrorists in Rumburg. The reformists suggest changes would also bring the communists, who are backed by United Cortana, into the assembly. Do you see the pattern yet? You're saying the reformists are working with foreign powers. Haven't you been briefed by your security aim? Maybe you should suspect them as well. We should take the necessary measures against communist and Brutish plots, as well as increasing our military budget against possible conflict with Rumburg. And of course, not fall into the traps of the reformers by listening to their demands. They are clearly plotting to weaken the president and our whole administration in order to exploit the situation. Which brings us to some very important information that we have. It's definitely something you need to hear, and it can change absolutely everything. With all due respect, Mr. President, I think this is getting slightly ridiculous. Please explain, Mr. Hawker, if you must. The person in question is Mr. Franz Richter himself, the leader of the reformists. We have enough information to infer that he has ties with Arcadia. Cool! I want to ally with them. Sounds great. You probably hate that, though. Arcadia is aggressively growing the influence around the world. Now we have Mr. Richter coming up with these ridiculous demands for a new constitution, amidst a chaotic period in Sordland. All the pieces seem to fit perfectly. That is why the Supreme Court will be doing what it takes to stop these reforms and preserve the Constitution. How would you know that Mr. Richter has ties to Arcadia? Mr. Gallade, we all know he has been in Arcadia many times because it's been documented. But what do you think if he has been making hidden flights to the country? So he was hiding his flights to Arcadia? He was. He has been spotted in a hotel in Arcadia last year, where they held the conference on economic development in volatile regions. Right around that time, he started to influence the masses into believing our Constitution is the reason for everything bad. His trip was not documented, nor he was an official guest of the conference. We believe that he had a meeting with President Walker behind closed doors. Or maybe he just goes back to the place he lived for a long time on occasions. Maybe he does do that, but oh well. I want to work with Arcadia anyways, so why should I care? I also have a couple more photos of him that were taken in Arcadia in different cities. One is from a couple months back. Again, none of it is documented. He also attended another event in Lesbia last week. The Arcadian Minister of Foreign Affairs was there too. How did you find out about this? Many Solars were already following his leads for quite some time, Mr. President. I cannot give away their identities, but I can give you the evidence. He handed me a small file. It contained official documents from the Swedish border guard with highlighted dates that showed no trace of Franz Richter's name. There were clear photos of him that were taken in the conference in Arcadia, as well as remarks by lesbian and Arcadian citizens who claimed to have seen him with Arcadian businessmen around the same dates. There was also an official transcript of one of his speeches where he claimed to be in Binfi on the dates of the conference in Arcadia, where he was spotted. Lucian skimmed through the documents with skepticism, which slowly turned into surprise. These seem to be real. Of course they are real, Mr. Gallade. These seem to suggest that Arcadia is behind the reformists. Their demands will only benefit Arcadia. They want us to be weaker, have a weaker administration while we face all these threats. This is clearly a plot against Sordland. I bet Rumburg is part of their plan too. This cannot be a coincidence that they are weaponizing our minorities against us around the same time. And I understand the reasons of our current stance, and also our suspicions about your advisors, who clearly have not given you this vital information. Lucian gave him a sharp look. We appreciate the information, Mr. Hawker, but I advise against jumping to conclusions right away. We still need to check the information. There is not much time to think or check. This is clearly an emergency. In such cases, the Constitution gives the President the right to use his emergency powers. If we work together, you can be sure that the Supreme Court will not block your declaration of emergency. You want me to declare an emergency? Of course, we cannot wait for the process of the Assembly to take care of these issues. You must exercise your presidential powers for a fast and effective solution, which means you might need to suspend parts of the Constitution to give more authority to a security force to deal with these issues. You must officially investigate Mr. Richter as well. You can devise a strong security decree if you can base it on the Articles 57 and 58, which gives the President the right to suspend parts of the Constitution to deal with national security threats. You can directly bypass the Assembly in such a situation. The only thing you need is the Supreme Court to allow the emergency to be declared. And you have our word on that. Sir, I think that is going to be a bit too far. We shouldn't escalate things so fast. Mr. President, why don't we talk in private, only the two of us? We can devise a plan together. I know how we can use the Constitution to our advantage. It would be more effective if Mr. Gallade and Mr. Grassi leave the room before we discuss it. Sir, I advise against it. Regardless of our situation, I'll be proceeding with the reforms. Even though you are aware of our national security threats, you are making a big mistake, Mr. President. We will not allow you to succeed. You are the ones who are making the mistake. We will see, Mr. President. We will see. Have a good evening. They both left the room without saying anything else. That was not good, sir. They clearly tried to threaten you. We have to make sure our reforms will pass the court, or so we'll be doing whatever it takes to damage you. We need to be careful. There are still many old guard sympathizers in our party. We could not let them divide our party, and he will definitely try. Really, phone? After a short evaluation of the situation on our hands, Lucien left me in the presidential office. It was obvious that the old guards would be my main rivals in the near future. Like, really, phone? You couldn't have just waited, like, a moment longer? Like, I'm almost done with this episode. Really, phone? Really? Calm yourself. Stop it. Bad phone. Thank you. Lachevin Times, Hawker and Maroon Palace. Chief Justice Urso Hawker has been spotted entering the Maroon Palace. Our sources are intrigued by the timing of this visit that is happening right after the increased conversations on the so-called democratic reform. Historically, Mr. Hawker usually does not frequent the palace unless for official business, and this was certainly an unplanned visit. Clearly, there must be something he wants out of this. Our speculation is that this has something to do with the reforms. More to come on this later. Interesting. Continue. Trials of Democracy. Woo! But we'll continue this in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace.